They say the past only hurts you if you let it back in. I never believed that, until the day it called my name out loud. I was standing under a string of pastel balloons outside Little Finch, a baby boutique off Brand Boulevard in Glendale, comparing two tiny knit hats, one with little bear ears, the other with a crooked star, when someone said my name in a voice I knew better than my own heartbeat. Lena? I stiffened so hard the hat slid from my fingers and thumped the display table. The Saturday crowd shuffled around me, all warm chatter and stroller wheels, the sugary smell of cinnamon pretzels drifting in from the mall. I turned and there he was, Mark Halloway, my ex-husband, in a charcoal jacket like he hadn't taken a risk in years, clean shave, hair trimmed on purpose to look accidental. He looked the way a locked door looks, polished, firm, and absolutely sure I didn't have the key. For a second, I forgot how to blink. The last time I'd seen him in person had been 12 months ago, a courthouse hallway where he didn't meet my eyes as the judge finalized the divorce he'd hurried along like a fire sale. Today his gaze landed on my midsection first, then floated up, cool and analytical, like he was appraising a used car. "What are you doing here?" he asked, as if I'd wandered into a private office instead of a public pop-up. His tone was soft enough to be polite and loud enough to be heard by people who weren't trying to hear. I swallowed. "Buying a hat." "You hate malls," he said, and his mouth tilted, not a smile, more like a memory rearranging itself. "Unless you're shopping for attention." Someone nearby laughed at nothing. I should have walked away. I should have picked up the hats and paid, and left him to whatever he'd come for. But I'm 5 months pregnant, and nothing about me moves fast anymore, especially not when my past calls me by name. Behind him, a small stage had been set up where an influencer mom with beachy hair, Sabrina Quinn, I recognized her from my feed, was leading a raffle for a diaper subscription. A ring light haloed her an artificial noon. She spotted Mark, brightened, and waved like they knew each other. He didn't wave back. "Mark," I said, and the word tasted like metal. "Please don't do this. Not here." "Do what?" He spread his hands as if he were being generous with the oxygen. "Talk to you. You're the one who's been calling. 4 missed calls this week." "I called once," I said, "from a blocked number, and I didn't leave a message." "You called." He shrugged, as though math was a matter of opinion. "I assumed you wanted to talk about this." He flicked his eyes toward my stomach. The gesture was practiced, a man who had been to enough corporate briefings to know how to acknowledge risk without accepting liability. Heat scraped the back of my neck. "It's not your business." "Everything about you used to be my business," he said. "You made sure of that." The people nearest us began to notice the temperature drop. A woman pretending to check price tags glanced between us. A dad with a toddler on his shoulders edged closer under the pretense of reaching for a plush giraffe. I could feel it, the slow formation of a ring, the way a crowd turns into an audience without anyone clapping. Sabrina's voice rose behind us. "And the winner of the month-long diaper bundle is..." She withdrew a ticket with theatrical fingers. "Number 176. A cheer. Confetti poppers." Mark didn't look away from me. "You should go," I said, keeping my voice low. "I don't want a scene," he laughed, soft, almost kind. "Lena, you are a scene." That was the moment a store associate in a pale yellow apron brushed between us with a rack of onesies. Mark stepped back, and his jacket gaped open. For a heartbeat, I saw the inside pocket and what was tucked there. A small carved baby rattle, pale wood rubbed smooth by years, a crescent of darker grain near the handle. My breath snagged. It couldn't be. My father and I had made that rattle the summer before Dad's stroke, sanding it by hand on the porch until the light died. The crescent looked like a thumbprint of the moon. I'd kept it in a box, and after Mark moved out, it had vanished along with a handful of other small things that didn't itemize well in a settlement. He saw where I was looking and, without missing a beat, tugged his jacket closed. "Cute," he said as if I'd commented on his tie. "Where did you get that?" My voice scraped thinner than I meant it to. He considered me for a half second, something like calculation flickering. "Gifts appear when you deserve them." "Gifts you steal," I said. The dad with the toddler sucked in a little breath. Sabrina, noticing the energy shift, pivoted on the stage. "Hey folks," she sang into the mic. "We're about to do a Q&A with a pediatric nurse. If you have questions about car seats..." Mark lifted his chin toward my belly again, toward the swell that had made me pick up a second job and a second spine. Is it mine? He asked, mild as weather. The question punched the air out of the boutique. Someone dropped a plastic pacifier. It clicked against the floor like a period. My throat locked. The way he said it, public, precise, practiced, wasn't curiosity. It was strategy. Don't, I said. Because if it is, he continued, we should talk about support. And if it isn't, well, then I'm just a concerned citizen who happens to know you. Sabrina hopped off the stage, mic still in hand, drawn by the gravity of a story that was writing itself. Everything okay over here? She asked, smiling like a lifeguard. We're fine, Mark told her, and his smile turned on, crisp and camera-ready. We were married once, old friends. Friends don't serve each other subpoenas, I said. Sabrina's smile bobbled. She retreated one step, enough to keep the angle, but not the liability. Mark's gaze sharpened. Let's be adult, Lena. There's no need to make this ugly. The rattle poked my mind again. That pale crescent, the feel of my father's hand guiding mine as we sanded the wood into something gentle. Give me back what's mine, I said, and my voice finally was steady. He blinked. The tiniest seam cracked in his composure. Then he chuckled like we both knew a joke. You never did like to let go. Before I could answer, he nodded to someone over my shoulder. I turned. A woman in a crisp cream dress was watching us from the entrance. Her belly rounder than mine, a showroom moon. She had Sabrina's hair, but glossier, and the kind of face that stayed pretty in fluorescent light. She lifted her hand in a small proprietary wave, as if to say, he's with me. When our eyes met, hers didn't flinch. She knew exactly who I was. I left before I said something I'd have to carry for the rest of my life. The hats stayed where they'd fallen. Outside, the California light had sharpened. The street shimmered with heat. My legs moved, but my mind stayed under the balloons, in that antiseptic glow, watching Mark fold his jacket closed over a rattle I'd lost and a history he'd rewritten. I made it to a bench beneath a sycamore, sat hard, and pressed my palms to my eyes. The baby rolled once, a slow protest, reminding me that my body was not a public square. I breathed in for 4, out for 6. The rhythm my therapist had taught me during the divorce when panic ate whole afternoons. Footsteps approached, then paused. Are you okay, honey? I lowered my hands. An older woman stood in front of me, silver hair cut in a bob that said she had made mistakes and survived them. She held out something pinched between thumb and finger, a laminated stub. You dropped this, she said, and passed it to me. It was a parking ticket from the garage under the mall. The timestamp read 10:42 a.m. I frowned. I don't have a car, I said. I'd taken the bus. Her eyes flicked conspiratorial. He did. She angled her chin toward the boutique. The gentleman who spoke to you, it fell from his pocket when he reached for whatever that was. You looked like you might need it more than he did. I stared at the stub. On the back, someone had scribbled a word in hurried block letters. Bluebird. Underneath it a number, 17B. My skin prickled. Bluebird. When we first married, Mark and I had daydreamed names for a future we couldn't afford. If we had a girl, he'd said, we'd call her Wren. I'd answered, Bluebird. It became a joke, a shorthand for a better season. It was also the name of a storage facility out by the freeway where Mark had insisted on keeping work stuff. I wasn't supposed to inventory, because marriage is trust, Lena. The woman must have seen something shift in my face. I used to have one like him, she said, gentle. They always think nobody's watching when everybody is. Thank you, I said, because I didn't know what else to say. She squeezed my shoulder. Drink some water, she advised, and don't let him write your story. When she walked away, I looked back at the boutique's glass. Mark and the woman in the cream dress were inside now. Sabrina had reclaimed the mic. A semicircle of new mothers had reformed. Mark turned slightly, and the light caught the outline of the rattle through his jacket. The woman, she had to be the fiancée he'd mentioned in the email I'd pretended not to read 3 months ago, slid her hand through his arm. She whispered something. He nodded. She looked past him, right at me, and smiled. It was not friendly. I should have stood, ripped the door open, and demanded the rattle back. I should have asked about the storage facility. Pressed that stub into his palm, forced him to show me what Bluebird 17B meant. But the baby turned again, a careful little ballet, and I realized cheap bravery wasn't bravery at all. Not anymore. So I did something else. I pulled out my phone. I still had Mark's old two-factor authentication codes in an app he'd forgotten to revoke, a relic of the days when we shared more than a last name. My hands shook as I opened it. Most of the codes were dead. One still refreshed with a steady pulse. Halloway Consulting, unit access. My mouth went dry. If he hadn't changed that, what else hadn't he changed? A shadow fell over my screen. Sabrina stood there, mic off now, eyes bright with the curiosity that had built her a following. Up close, one of her front teeth overlapped the other slightly, a charming imperfection. Off the record, she said softly. Is that guy bothering you? Yes, I said. The honesty surprised both of us. I thought so. He has the posture. She glanced toward the boutique. I know him. Not well. He's pitched me brand partnerships. Sweat, he's very controlled. That's one word, I said. She hesitated. Do you need help? I almost said no. Then I heard my therapist's other mantra. Let people be good to you. Actually, I said, can you do me a favor? Can you take a photo? Right now, through the glass. She followed my gaze, clocked the rattle outline, the way the woman's hand tightened at Mark's elbow when he laughed. Without asking why, Sabrina lifted her phone and snapped 3 pictures. She airdropped them to me. The second one caught the rattle as the jacket shifted, a clear crescent of darker wood near the handle. My father's moon, proof. Thank you, I said and meant it. If I need to reach you, she grinned crookedly, DM me. I answer the messy ones. When she left, my fingers found the old anxiety groove in my ring finger, where Mark's wedding band had worn a dent that hadn't yet smoothed out. The parking stub pulsed light against my palm. Bluebird 17B. Halloway Consulting, unit access. The rattle in his jacket, the way his voice had found the exact volume that would humiliate me and call it concern. A delivery truck rumbled past, a banner on its side reading, "Nothing disappears, it just moves." I laughed, sharp, humorless. Maybe that was true. Maybe the life I'd lost hadn't vanished at all. It had gone into storage under a forgettable name, tucked behind a lock I'd already learned how to open. The baby nudged higher like a tiny elbow pointing. Okay, I thought. Not today, not with an audience and balloons and an influencer with a microphone. But soon, I slipped the parking stub into my wallet, took one more look through the glass at the man who used to be my gravity, and stood. He didn't see me go. He was busy accepting a complimentary gift bag from a clerk, smiling with just his teeth. The woman in cream did see me. She mouthed something I couldn't catch. Maybe it was goodbye. Maybe it was, good girl. Either way, I let it float. My reflection followed me down the sidewalk. A pregnant woman with a backbone, moving slower than she wanted to and faster than she had yesterday. I passed a bus stop poster that said, "Do you know your rights?" And for the first time in months, I wondered if I did. I touched my belly. We're gonna find out, I whispered. We're gonna find out what he's hiding in Bluebird. Because the truth about Mark Halloway was this: he was careful. But careful men make habits, and habits leave prints. I had a photograph of a stolen rattle, a code he'd forgotten to kill, and a word that had once been a dream and might now be a map. I thought I'd lost everything, but that was only the beginning. I didn't go straight home. I rode the 92 bus north, forehead against the cool glass, and let Brand Boulevard slide past like a conveyor of other people's lives. Glendale blurred into Eagle Rock, into rotisserie chicken shops and plant nurseries and bright murals the sun was already bleaching. I watched moms steer strollers with one hand and hold iced coffees with the other. Watched teenagers skateboard like they were trying to skip time. I watched the hillside houses pin the afternoon in place. I got off near my building, a 2-story stucco with a cracked fountain that had never held water in the time I'd lived there. The mailboxes out front were dented and honest. I climbed the stairs slow, one hand on the rail, the other on my belly, as if the baby could roll away. Inside, my apartment smelled like laundry detergent and lemon oil because I kept it that way. I turned the window fan on high. The palm outside rattled its leaves in approval. On the counter, my apron from the bakery hung where I'd left it, a sugary ghost of my second job. On the table, a spiral notebook lay open to a budget that had bled through the page. Teaching art at the middle school paid the rent as long as I kept saying no to everything else. New shoes, dessert, the little bowl at Trader Joe's that looked like hope. When the district cut hours in January, the bakery had said yes when I asked for evenings. 2 months later, the test stick bloomed pink, and the word no started wearing different clothes. People like to say I'm strong. What they mean is I don't cry where they can see me. I learned that from my mother, whose smile calcified sometime in the early aughts and never quite thawed. From my father, I learned how to make something soft out of something hard, how to sand wood until it fit in a baby's palm without snagging. He'd had his stroke the week after Mark proposed, like his body was warning me in a language I didn't yet speak. He never fully recovered. He would clap when I came by, speech slurred, eyes angry that they'd been betrayed. He died the winter the divorce finalized. The rattle we made together disappeared the same week as my grandmother's locket and a tiny cedar box that smelled like the forest my mother used to wish for. None of those items were on any inventory. Trinkets. Mark had said when I'd brought it up. Sentiment doesn't change market value. I put water on to boil without meaning to. My hands had their own rituals. When the kettle sang, I didn't make tea. I turned the burner off and stood there listening to the hush after the noise. It sounded like classrooms at the end of the day, chalk dust settling in a light you didn't want to turn off. My phone buzzed. A voicemail icon. No number. I stabbed it open and held the phone at arm's length like it could bite. Miss Halloway. Sorry, Miss Burke. A man's careful voice. Legal. This is Daniel Cooper from Winslow and Ames, counsel for Mr. Halloway. We're filing a petition for genetic testing and interim support orders. We'd like to discuss a mutually agreeable timeline. Please return my call. I didn't realize I'd sat until the chair's edge pressed a line into the back of my thighs. We're filing, he'd said, as if I were a stubborn form. He'd said interim support like a favor. He'd said genetic testing loud enough for no one in particular to hear. I hung up and set the phone face down. The baby shifted and I rubbed a slow circle to say I was still here. The windows hummed. A siren in the distance tried on the idea of urgency and then put it away. The kettle clicked as it cooled. I let the voicemail echo until anger found a place to stand inside me. It wasn't a wildfire. I don't burn like that. It was more like the tide on a day you think is calm, each wave landing a little higher, refusing to take back what it brought. Fine, I thought. We'll discuss a timeline, but not yours. I went to the bedroom and pulled a plastic bin from under the bed. Inside, a shoebox labeled taxes, another labeled photos, and one with no label at all. The unlabeled one held what I hadn't been ready to name: a Ziploc with a cracked key fob, a folded sheet of paper with unit access printed at the top, and a business card with Halloway Consulting embossed so deep it left a bruise on the card beneath it. The unit access page was from a security app Mark had installed our second year together. Convenience, he'd said when he shared the login. We're a team. The paper listed 2-factor methods: SMS, his number; email, his work address; and L Authenticator. I opened the Authenticator app on my phone. The code was still ticking over, blue digits bleeding into the next blue digits, reliable as a metronome. My name sat at the top of the app, ghosted alongside his. Lena and Mark. He'd never bothered to take me off because he didn't think I would look. He hadn't counted on the quiet ways I'd learned to stay. I typed Bluebird Storage Los Angeles into my browser. The website was cheerful, all cartoon sparrows and promises of first month free. I clicked locations. There it was, Bluebird Self-Storage, Glendale Freeway, with a photo of a low, beige building and a fence that looked like it had opinions. Office hours ended at 6. Gate access until 10. I wrote the address on a sticky note and stuck it to the back of my hand like I was in middle school. Pictures from Sabrina pinged into my messages. The rattle showed up like a watermark in one. I zoomed until the pixels fought me. That crescent was ours. My father's thumbprint, but made of grain and patience. I saved the photo to a file named Proof, a word that steadied me. I scrolled her profile, meaning to say thank you properly. The most recent post was from last week, a gender reveal party where confetti cannons had thrown pink into a blue sky. Sabrina's caption tagged her sister, at Tessa.Quinn. The woman in the cream dress? I tapped through. Tessa's grid was neat: neutrals, sun flares, curated joy. In a photo from 2 months ago, she stood in front of a concrete wall with a mural of birds. A hand rested on her small bump, The other held a coffee cup printed with the name of a brand Mark's firm had repped. The caption, "New beginnings with my favorite partner in everything, M." My stomach tightened. The initials could have been anyone, but the comments made them specific. Sabrina had written, "We love Mark," with a heart. Tessa had replied, "He loves us more." 2 swipes later, there was Mark's shoulder in a mirror, half caught, the kind of accident that isn't one. I put the phone down face up this time. I wanted to be able to see whatever came next coming. Then I did the thing I always do when my life feels like a deck someone else is shuffling. I lined up small facts until they looked like a straight line. Fact: Mark had a rattle that belonged to me, to my father, to a version of the future we'd buried. Fact: he had a storage unit under a name he used to move money and brand incentives. Fact: he'd initiated a legal process that would put my life on a table for strangers to examine and pass notes about. Fact: I was carrying a baby who deserved a mother who did not back away from doors. I changed into sneakers. I pulled my hair into a knot that wasn't pretty but wouldn't fall. I grabbed a water bottle, my notebook, and the cracked key fob from the Ziploc, because sometimes old plastic knows its way home. On my way out, I stopped at the little shrine on the bookshelf where I keep my father's photo and a candle I light when I'm brave enough to ask for help. "Dad," I said, and my voice did that thing it does when I permit it to be a child. "I'm going to go look. If this is a bad idea, knock something over." Nothing moved. The candle flame did its quiet work. Outside, my neighbor's dog barked twice and then remembered we're friends. The bus back toward the freeway was nearly empty. A man in a Dodgers cap snored softly, mouth open like he was trying to catch whatever dream he was in. A teenage girl with chipped, black nail polish took pictures of the sunset and didn't bother pretending she wasn't taking pictures of the sunset. I held the pole and swayed with the city's rhythm. Bluebird sat behind a tire shop and a check-cashing place, its Happy Bird logo trying too hard on a blank wall. The office lights were on, but the door had a chain across it and a sign that said, "Back at 9 a.m. A keypad guarded the gate. I stood across the street and looked like I was waiting for someone who might not show. Cars slid in and out. People punched codes with the confidence of routine. No one looked around. A man with a tool belt used a fob, not a code, and the gate recognized him like a friend. When the tail of his pickup had barely cleared the line, I stepped off the curb and slid in after it, one hand on my belly, heart drumming in my throat. My mother's voice, the careful one that kept us safe, hissed in my head. "What are you doing?" My father's voice, the one I keep for emergencies, answered. "Finding out." Inside, it was cooler. Concrete breathed a different kind of air. The units were stacked like a grid of secrets, each with a number stenciled in blue. I walked as if I belonged. 9A, 10A, 11A. The baby shifted, a compass needle aligning. I turned a corner. 16B, 17B, 18B. There it was, 17B, plain as an apology. I didn't touch it. The door rolled down tight, a silver lid, a round lock fat on the latch. A keypad waited beside it for a code I didn't have. I pulled the cracked key fob from my pocket, felt foolish, and then felt something else. Hope's smaller cousin, the one who shows up in flats and sensible slacks. I held the fob near the reader. The light blinked red, then green, then stayed green like it had found an old friend. "Are you kidding me?" I whispered, and laughed, because sometimes the only choice left is astonishment. A voice echoed down the row. "Hello?" I looked up. A security guard in a navy polo turned the corner, a clipboard in his hand and suspicion in his eyes. "Evening," I said, packing calm into my syllables. I held up the fob like a hall pass. "Just grabbing a box. My husband forgot to leave me the code." "Your husband?" His eyebrows organized themselves into a judgment. His gaze dropped to my stomach and softened, the way people's gazes do when they remember women are the ones who built them. "Ex," I corrected, and let the word sit there between us like a choice I'd made on purpose. "But we're civil." He nodded, the way men nod when they want credit for believing you. "Make it quick, okay? We close the gate at 10. "I'll be in and out," I promised, and the future tensed around the lie and prepared to forgive me for it. The guard disappeared. I exhaled. The green light on the reader blinked, as if it were losing patience. I typed the first 6 digits that came to mind. Our anniversary, because Mark isn't original when he thinks he is. The keypad chirped like a smug bird. The lock clicked. The door didn't fly up in a rush of revelation. It rolled slowly, croaking, heavy, the kind of weight you have to respect. The smell that came out was dust and something chemical with a clean edge, like new paint on old walls. Inside, shadows built little houses around stacks of bankers' boxes labeled in Mark's tidy block letters. Invoices Q3, NDAs, client gifts, a garment bag hung from a hook, a plastic tub with a blue lid balanced on a filing cabinet. On top of the tub sat something small and pale, haloed by a strip of light that found it through a gap in the door. The rattle. I reached and my fingers shook, not from fear, from reverence. The wood met my palm like it had been waiting to come home. The crescent was dark as a bruise and the handle was the exact width of my father's intent. "Hi," I told it, because I talk to things when I've missed them. In the quiet after that, my phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number lit the screen. "You should leave." 3 dots blinked. Then, "They're coming." I turned toward the mouth of the unit, where the light from the corridor narrowed into something that could be a door or could be a trap. For one heartbeat, I thought of the bus ride back, the bakery shift in the morning, the careful budget on my table, the quiet candle on the bookshelf. Then I looked at the boxes labeled with a history I hadn't been allowed to read, and I understood something new about myself. I wasn't brave because I didn't feel fear. I was brave because I felt it and stayed. I tucked the rattle into my tote, snapped a quick photo of the unit with the labels legible, and started reading the spines of the nearest boxes with my eyes, memorizing the titles like vocabulary. Behind me, footsteps. 2 pairs. Maybe 3. "Ma'am?" The guard again, but this time his voice had company. A woman's, bright and careful, made of cream-colored dresses and curated joy. "Hi, Lena," Tessa said. And for the second time that day, someone who hadn't been invited used my name like it belonged to them. The sound of her heels against concrete was wrong in this place. Too clean, too deliberate. Tessa Quinn, Mark's fiancée, Sabrina's sister, stepped into the corridor of units like she was entering a photo shoot, not a storage facility that smelled like dust and metal. Her cream dress looked brighter against the gray walls, her hand resting lightly on her belly as though she knew exactly how to weaponize softness. The security guard hovered a step behind her, clipboard now tucked under his arm like a shield. His earlier sympathy had evaporated, his eyes darted between us, caught in a job he didn't sign up for. "Hi, Lena," Tessa said again, warmer this time, like we'd been friends at some point. "Funny running into you here." I tightened my grip on the rattle inside my tote, its wood pressing into my palm like a reminder of who I was before Mark rewrote me. My voice came out steady. "Not funny at all." She tilted her head, her glossy hair catching the dim light. "You're right. Nothing about this is funny. It's tragic. You sneaking into Mark's unit, pregnant, tired, still clinging to the past, it just looks sad." Her tone was sympathetic in a way that hurt more than cruelty. The guard shifted uneasily. "Ma'am," he said to me, "you can't be in here without the account holder." "I am the account holder," I lied, holding up the fob like it was proof of citizenship. Or at least I was. My pulse thudded in my throat. "He left me access." Tessa smiled faintly, not buying it. She stepped closer, her heels clicking like punctuation marks. "Mark said you might try something like this. You've always had a talent for drama." Her eyes dropped to my stomach, especially now. The baby fluttered, a nervous little dance, and I pressed my free hand against my belly. I wanted to say, "This is none of your business." But the words jammed in my throat because, clearly, Mark had already made it her business. "Why are you here?" I asked, forcing myself to sound curious instead of cornered. She gave a small laugh. "Because Mark knows you. He knows you can't resist chasing ghosts. He asked me to stop by, just in case you wandered into places you shouldn't. And here you are." She gestured at the rows of boxes behind me, her voice lowering. "Do you have any idea what you've stumbled into?" The guard cleared his throat. "Should I call this in?" "No," Tessa said smoothly, without looking at him. "Mark will handle it." She turned back to me. "But maybe I'll give you a little advice, woman to woman. Sometimes digging too deep doesn't give you answers. It just buries you further." I took one step closer, until we were 2 feet apart. 2 women carrying futures inside us but standing on opposite sides of the same wound. "That rattle is mine," I said quietly. "My father made it. Mark stole it." Her smile didn't falter. But her eyes flickered just for an instant. Then maybe you should have held on tighter. Something inside me snapped. Not rage, not panic. Something quieter, heavier. Resolve. I slipped my phone from my tote, held it up, and pressed record. "Say that again," I told her. My voice echoed in the corridor. The guard raised his hands. "Hey, let's not." Tessa's expression hardened, the sweetness dropping like a mask. "Careful, Lena. Pregnant women don't look good in police reports." "Neither do thieves," I shot back. For a long second, the air between us felt electrified, like if either of us moved, the whole row of units would collapse. Then she leaned in, close enough that her perfume, vanilla and sharp citrus, burned my nose. Her whisper was cold. "You think you know, Mark. You don't know half of it. And if you're smart, you'll stop trying." She pulled back, her smile snapping back on, camera ready. "Let's go," she told the guard, turning her back on me as if I were already dismissed. Her heels clicked away, echoing until they vanished around the corner. The guard lingered, eyes uneasy. "You should lock up and leave," he muttered. Then he followed her. I stood alone in the corridor, my tote heavy against my side, the rattle pressing against my hip like a second heartbeat. The unit yawned open behind me, boxes whispering promises I wasn't ready to read. I lowered the door until it sealed shut again, the lock clicking with a sound that felt too final. As I walked back toward the gate, my phone buzzed. A new text. No number, just the words, "Don't trust her. Don't trust him. But keep digging. The truth is bigger than you think." The baby nudged hard, almost like agreement, and for the first time since Mark said my name outside that boutique, I didn't feel small. I felt awake. The next morning, the voicemail from Mark's lawyer was still sitting in my inbox like a snake in a shoebox. I didn't play it again. I didn't need to. The words genetic testing had already etched themselves into my skin. At school, the kids were louder than usual. 7th graders can smell tension like sharks smell blood. "Miss B," one of them chirped, "why do you look like you fought a ghost?" I smiled, said I was tired, and showed them how to shade a sphere until it looked like it might roll off the page. By lunch, I had forgotten my own advice and almost burst into tears over a peanut butter sandwich I didn't have time to eat. When the bell rang at 3, I thought I was free. But waiting in the parking lot, leaning against a car I knew he couldn't afford without help, was Mark. "Hey, Lena," he called, too casual, as parents streamed past with their kids. My throat closed. I wanted to keep walking, but teachers don't get to ignore scenes. I squared my shoulders. "You can't be here." "It's public property," he said, loud enough for the parents to hear. "I'm here to talk about our child." Our child. The words detonated in the air, heads turned. Mrs. Alvarez, who taught science next door, froze with her key in the door. A boy named Milo pointed at me and whispered to his friend, both of them grinning like they'd discovered their art teacher had a secret double life. "I don't want to do this in front of students," I hissed. Mark straightened, his voice dipping into practiced sincerity. "I don't either. But you won't answer my calls, Lena. You left me no choice." "You had a choice," I snapped. "Plenty of them." A mother tugging her daughter closer muttered, "Is that her ex?" Another whispered, "That poor baby." My face burned hot enough to blister. "Is it mine?" Mark asked, crisp and cold, cutting through the whispers. "The baby. Just answer me." Silence swallowed the parking lot. A soccer ball rolled past someone's sneakers and no one picked it up. I could feel 20 pairs of eyes slicing me open. I opened my mouth, but no sound came. Mark stepped closer, lowering his voice only enough for people to have to lean in mentally. "We can avoid the courts, Lena. Just be honest with me. With them." He swept a hand toward the parents, the children my colleagues. My whole fragile world. My chest tightened. I wanted to scream, to claw the smugness off his face, but the baby pressed up under my ribs, reminding me what was at stake. Then I heard a familiar click. Someone had pulled out their phone. Recording, of course. This was exactly the theater Mark had scripted. I forced my lips into a thin line and said nothing. "See," he told the crowd, shaking his head like a disappointed parent. "She can't even say it. That tells you everything." "Enough," I whispered, but it was swallowed by the noise of whispers, the whine of a bus's brakes, the snap of the phone camera capturing my shame. Mark smiled then, not at me, but at the audience he had gathered, like a magician proud of his reveal. "I'll be in touch," he said, low enough that only I could hear. Then he slipped into his car and drove away, leaving tire marks like underlines on the pavement. For a moment, I stood frozen, everyone's eyes on me. Then Mrs. Alvarez put her hand on my shoulder. "You don't have to explain," she said softly, but her pity cut sharper than judgment. I walked to my car, head down, the whispers trailing me like smoke. Inside, I finally let the tears come. But as they blurred the windshield, my phone buzzed. A message from the same unknown number. "He's setting you up. Don't let the story be his." Attached was a photo. Grainy, but clear enough. Mark and Tessa, standing inside the Bluebird unit. He was handing her a box labeled Client Gifts. She was smiling, but her eyes were sharp, like a woman holding something dangerous. The baby shifted again, firm this time, as if saying, "Keep going." And for the first time in that parking lot full of whispers, I knew exactly what I had to do. The video showed up online that same night. Someone had uploaded it to a parenting forum first, then it slid onto TikTok, then Facebook, where the parents of my students passed it around like gossip at a barbecue. By midnight, my inbox had 3 emails from the principal. Polite at first, then clipped, asking me to clarify the situation. By morning, my landlord's wife, who liked to water the stairwell plants at inconvenient times, looked at me like I was something her cat had dragged in. I didn't leave my apartment that day. The blinds stayed shut. The kettle stayed cold. I curled on the couch with a pillow under my belly and let the walls listen to what I couldn't say out loud. The baby moved once, twice, then quieted, as if waiting for me to calm down. I whispered apologies into the fabric of the pillow until my throat hurt. The internet had already chosen sides. Some comments called me a liar, a gold digger, a woman desperate to trap a man. Others defended me, saying Mark had ambushed me, manipulated the moment. But defense didn't matter. The damage was in the fact that strangers felt entitled to debate me at all. By day 3, I hadn't showered. By day 4, the bakery called to ask if I was coming in or if they should reassign my shifts. By day 5, the principal emailed again, this time with the subject line, "Meeting required." I dragged myself to the mirror. My skin looked pale, my hair dull. There were shadows under my eyes that no concealer could lift. For the first time, I saw myself as Mark wanted the world to see me, unstable, unreliable, barely hanging on. The thought hollowed me out. I forced myself to go outside, hoping the air would scrub some of the heaviness from me. The sun was too bright, the street too loud. My body ached with the weight of carrying not just the baby, but the judgment of everyone who thought they knew my story. At the bus stop, a mother with twins gave me a once-over and tugged her stroller back, as if shame were contagious. I lasted 10 minutes in the bakery before my manager pulled me aside. "We've had feedback," she said, her voice tight. "Parents don't want someone with that kind of publicity handling food. Maybe take some time off." "Time off means no pay," I said flatly. Her silence was confirmation. I walked home slower this time, my body heavy, my mind heavier. That night, I dreamed of my father. He was sanding the rattle again, but this time the wood splintered no matter how careful he was. He looked at me, his mouth working to form words his stroke had stolen in real life. In the dream, he managed one. Fight. I woke with my pillow wet. For the first time in days, I sat up straight, but the strength didn't last. The voicemail from the lawyer replayed itself in my head. The video online replayed itself on my phone. The whispers replayed themselves in the bakery, the bus stop, the school. On the 7th day, my body gave out. I collapsed in the kitchen, my head barely missing the corner of the counter. Pain rippled across my belly, and I screamed, clutching myself. For one terrifying second, I thought I was losing the baby. At the hospital, fluorescent lights turned everyone into ghosts. Nurses moved quickly, checking, measuring, whispering. The baby's heartbeat appeared on the monitor, steady, resilient. Relief crashed over me so hard I sobbed into my gown. A nurse squeezed my hand. "You need rest. Stress this high isn't safe for you or the baby. Rest." As if rest were something I could just pick up at the store. When I was discharged, a small white envelope waited in my mailbox. No return address. Inside, a single photograph. The rattle again, but this time placed on top of a document stamped with a seal I recognized. Governmental, federal. Words blurred, but one line stood out clear. Contractual agreement. Confidential. My pulse spiked. Whoever had sent this wasn't just warning me. They were giving me a thread to pull. I held the photo against my chest, the paper bending under my grip. For the first time in a week, I felt the faint flicker of something other than despair. It wasn't hope yet, but it was close. The envelope wouldn't leave my hands. I carried it to the kitchen table, turned on the lamp, and stared at the photograph until my eyes burned. The rattle lay across a document stamped with an official seal. Bold, federal. Not the kind of paper ordinary people ever touch. Contractual agreement. Confidential. I didn't recognize the other text, but I knew enough to sense danger. Mark was always clever with money, clever with loopholes. But federal contracts? That wasn't just consulting. That was something else. Something with consequences. I pulled my laptop closer, hands trembling, and zoomed in on the photo. Most words were blurred, but a phrase in the header caught. Department of Defense Procurement. My stomach dropped. What business did Mark have with the Defense Department? The rattle's crescent moon lay across the page like an accusation. I heard my father's dream voice again. Fight. I opened a new document, typed everything I knew. Bluebird Unit 17B, boxes labeled client gifts, invoices, NDAs, the rattle, the anonymous texts, and now this photograph. Proof existed. The problem was connecting it before Mark buried me under his story. My phone buzzed. Another message from the blocked number. You're close. Don't stop. Look at the invoices in 17B. Follow the names. A friend. My hands shook as I typed back for the first time. Who are you? No reply. Just silence. The next day, I forced myself to go back to Bluebird. Not at night this time, but mid-afternoon when the place hummed with renters shuffling boxes, contractors hauling tools, no one looking too closely at anyone else. I wore a baseball cap low, carried an empty cardboard box, and walked with the exhaustion of someone who belonged. The fob still worked. My pulse didn't settle until I rolled the door of 17B open. The smell hit again. Dust, chemicals, secrets. This time, I didn't go for the rattle. I went straight for the boxes marked invoices. I tore one open, pulled out a stack of papers, rows of company names, amounts in the tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds. The recipient, Halloway Consulting. The payer, often disguised as shell names, Bluefin Industries, Clear Sky Solutions, Trident Partners. But one caught my eye. Atlas Defense Logistics. I remembered reading about them. Accusations of bribery, quietly settled cases, contractors cut loose after whistleblowers disappeared. Every invoice was signed off with the same initials. TQ, Tessa Quinn. I dropped the papers back into the box, my chest hammering. Tessa wasn't just Mark's fiancée. She was in it, up to her neck. A shadow fell over me. Find anything interesting? I spun around. Mark stood in the doorway of the unit, blocking the light, his smile cool and thin. Behind him, Tessa leaned casually against the corridor wall, her cream dress replaced with black slacks and a blazer sharp enough to cut glass. Her hand rested on her belly, but her eyes were steel. My throat went dry. You can't be here. Mark stepped inside, the door rolling lower as he entered. Funny. I was about to say the same thing to you. Tessa's voice carried, smooth and firm. Go ahead, Lena. Tell him what you found. Tell him how far you've dug into things you don't understand. I clutched the box against my chest, papers threatening to spill. These invoices. Your initials are on them, Tessa. What are you doing signing off military contracts under shell companies? For the first time, her smile faltered. Mark shot her a glance, then turned back to me with a laugh. God, Lena, you always were imaginative. Do you know how easy it is to fake initials on a printout? You really think anyone's going to believe a washed-up art teacher over us? People will believe proof, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I lifted my phone. Red light on. Recording. Mark's smile cracked. He moved toward me. Turn it off. No, I said, pressing my back against the wall of boxes. Not this time. Tessa stepped forward, her heels clicking against the concrete. Lena, she said softly, almost pitying. You're pregnant. You don't need this stress. Walk away while you still can. My hand tightened around the phone. I walked away once. That's how he stole everything that mattered to me. I'm not walking away again. Mark's eyes narrowed. Then you've made your choice. He slammed the door shut behind him, plunging the unit into a half-darkness that smelled of dust and lies. And in that moment, holding my father's rattle in one hand and my phone in the other, I realized I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting to bring the whole truth into the light. The storage unit's air was thick enough to choke on. Mark stood close enough that I could see the faint scar under his jaw, a relic of some childhood accident he'd once spun into a heroic story. Tessa hovered near the doorway, her silhouette slicing the light into sharp angles. My phone still glowed red in my hand, recording, but my thumb trembled over the screen. "Turn it off, Lena," Mark said again, low and even. "You don't know what you're playing with." "I know enough." I shot back, holding the box of invoices tighter against my chest. Atlas Defense. Shell companies. Your fiancé's initials all over the contracts. You're not just cheating women, Mark. You're laundering government money. Tessa's face flickered, just for an instant, but then she smoothed it over, her smile as polished as glass. "And what exactly do you think you'll do with that little theory? March into the Pentagon? Upload a video to TikTok? No one will take you seriously." Mark chuckled. "They'll say you're unstable, pregnant, emotional, that you broke into my unit and fabricated documents out of spite, and they'll believe me." Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A new text appeared on the screen from the same blocked number. "Don't believe them. Ask him about Phoenix." The words hit like a slap. I glanced up at Mark. His jaw tightened, just barely, but enough for me to see it. "Phoenix," I said aloud. "What's Phoenix, Mark?" For the first time, he lost his composure. The smile vanished. His eyes darkened. "Who told you that?" I lifted the phone. "A friend." The air shifted, and then a voice echoed from the corridor. That friend would be me. All three of us turned. A figure stepped into the strip of light outside the unit. Jeans, leather jacket, a face I hadn't seen in years but knew instantly. Daniel Vega. My father's former apprentice, the kid who used to help him in the workshop, sanding wood, learning patience. The boy who disappeared after Mark came into my life. Now older, sharper, shadows under his eyes, but unmistakably him. "Danny?" My throat tightened. He nodded once, his gaze locked on Mark. "She deserves to know the truth. About Phoenix. About all of it." Tessa hissed. "You shouldn't be here." But Danny ignored her. He stepped closer, his voice low but steady. "Phoenix isn't a place, it's a program, a weapons contract funneled through shell companies like Atlas Defense. Mark's been laundering kickbacks through Bluebird for over 2 years. Tessa signs off the invoices. Mark moves the money. Millions. And the rattle?" He nodded at my tote. "That wasn't just a theft, it was leverage. A reminder that he can erase history whenever he wants." My knees went weak. I gripped the wall to steady myself. "Why didn't you tell me before?" "Because you wouldn't have believed me," Danny said gently. "Not until you saw it yourself. Not until he humiliated you enough to fight back." Mark's voice snapped through the air. "You're finished, Vega. You don't know what you're talking about." But his tone betrayed him. Tessa's eyes darted between us, calculating. For the first time, I saw a crack in her armor. She wasn't untouchable. She was scared. Danny took a step closer, slipping a flash drive from his pocket and pressing it into my hand. "Everything's on here. Emails, transfers, Phoenix. It's enough to bury him." Mark lunged forward, but I shoved the phone in his face, the red light blinking. "Try it," I warned, my voice breaking but fierce. "Lay a hand on me and this video goes everywhere." For a beat, the world froze. Mark's chest heaved, Tessa's breath caught, Danny's jaw clenched. Then Mark laughed, soft and dangerous. "You think you've won something, Lena? You've just painted a target on your back, on his." He jerked his chin at Danny. "And on that baby you're carrying." Cold shivered through me, but the rattle in my tote pressed against my side, reminding me of my father's word, fight. I lifted my chin. "No, Mark, the target's on you." Behind me, the baby moved, a firm kick, as if to underline it, and for the first time in years, I saw Mark Halloway falter. When the storage unit door slammed shut behind me, I half expected Mark to follow. But he didn't. He let me walk out with Danny at my side, the flash drive burning in my palm like it weighed 10 pounds. That was scarier than if he had tried to stop me. Mark never let go unless he already had another play lined up. Danny drove us in his beat-up Chevy pickup, the same one he'd had when he used to help my dad in the workshop. The upholstery was cracked, the dashboard sticky, but it smelled like safety, like sawdust and coffee. "You shouldn't have come back," I said finally, staring out the window as we passed the neon blur of Glendale's strip malls. "I promised your dad I'd watch out for you," Danny said, his voice quiet but sure. "I broke that promise once. I won't again." That cracked something inside me. My father's absence still hurt like a fresh bruise, and hearing his name spoken in loyalty instead of pity nearly undid me. I clenched the flash drive tighter. If what's on here is real, it's not just fraud, it's treason. Danny nodded. And it's not just Mark and Tessa. Phoenix runs deep. Politicians, defense contractors, influencers laundering image for cash. You expose this, Lena. You're not just burning him, you're setting fire to a whole network. My breath hitched. I'm pregnant, Danny. I can't be a crusader. You don't have to be, he said, glancing at me. You just have to be brave enough to hand this to the right people. I'll take the heat. You survive. But I shook my head. No, he humiliated me. He stole from my father. He tried to rewrite me into nothing. This isn't just about survival, it's about justice. We pulled into a 24-hour diner, the kind with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tasted like rust but never stopped flowing. We slid into a corner booth. I set the flash drive on the table between us. Danny leaned forward. First step, we make copies. Cloud storage, encrypted, multiple accounts. If Mark tries to erase one, the others live. Second step, we leak just enough to bait the press. Not everything, just enough to make the right people nervous. And third, I asked. He smiled grimly. Third, we go public. You, not me. You're the one they already filmed. The internet knows your face. Mark thought he could use that against you, but we're going to turn it around. The thought twisted my stomach. The idea of stepping into that spotlight willingly after what happened in the school parking lot felt like walking naked into fire. But I thought of my baby, of the rattle, of my father's whispered word. Fight. What if no one believes me? I whispered. Danny pulled out his phone and swiped through until he landed on a video. He turned the screen toward me. It was Mark at some luxury gala, shaking hands with a man I didn't recognize. The caption at the bottom read, Senator Klein meets with rising consultant Mark Halloway. Danny hit pause, then zoomed in. Behind Mark, almost invisible, was Tessa, holding a file folder. The corner of the folder bore the same Defense Department seal as the document in the photograph I'd received. Someone will believe you, Danny said firmly. Because this is bigger than him, bigger than us, and they're sloppy. They think no one's paying attention. The waitress came with 2 mugs of coffee, giving us the kind of look that said she'd seen every conspiracy in the world hashed out in her booths at 3 a.m. I wrapped my hands around the mug and let the heat ground me. I'll need evidence that ties me to this, I said slowly. Not just random papers, something that proves Mark targeted me, used me. Danny tilted his head. You already have it, the rattle. Everyone who knows your dad knows he made it. It's proof Mark took what wasn't his. Proof he uses personal leverage the same way he uses contracts. I stared down at the flash drive again, my reflection warped in the plastic. My baby shifted, a firm little kick, as if reminding me I wasn't carrying this alone. Okay, I said finally. We do it. We burn him. Public. No hiding. Danny leaned back, relief flickering across his face. Good. Then tomorrow we start building the fire. But just as he said it, my phone buzzed again. Another blocked message. Careful. Someone inside the press has already bought. If you leak to the wrong person, you'll vanish like the others. My chest went tight. The others. The words hung heavy, like ghosts of people who had tried before me and failed. I looked at Danny. Then we can't just hand it to anyone. No, he said, his jaw tightening. We hand it to someone who can't be bought. I thought of Sabrina, the influencer with messy teeth who had taken the photos for me without asking why. She wasn't perfect, but she was loud, and loud was what I needed now. I exhaled. I think I know who. And in the reflection of the diner window, for the first time since this started, I saw myself not as a victim but as a spark. When I looked at myself in the mirror a week later, I almost didn't recognize the woman staring back. The shadows under my eyes were still there, but they weren't weakness anymore. They were war paint. My hair, usually knotted in messy buns between bakery shifts and lesson plans, now fell in a sleek braid over my shoulder. I wore black, not because it hid me, but because it sharpened me. And my belly, round and undeniable, was no longer something Mark could use to shame me. It was my shield, proof of life, proof of endurance. Danny whistled low when I stepped out of my bedroom. You look like someone who's about to ruin a man's life. I smiled, small and sharp. Good, because I am. The plan had taken shape faster than I expected. Sabrina had agreed to help after I showed her the flash drive's contents. She wasn't perfect, but she was bold and, more importantly, unbought. Her following was massive, her audience hungry for authenticity. And her sister's betrayal had lit a fire she was eager to feed. "We'll live stream it," she had said, eyes gleaming behind the glow of her ring light. "No editing, no cuts. They can't spin what's raw." I'd nodded. "But it can't just be me talking, it has to be proof. Real documents, real names." Danny had handled the backups, scattering copies of the flash drive across encrypted clouds, hidden drives, and even mailing one to his cousin in New Mexico just in case. Now, standing in Sabrina's studio, white walls, potted plants, shelves curated for the camera, I felt the old fear gnawing at my ribs. What if they didn't believe me? What if Mark spun this too, turned me into the hysterical ex with conspiracy theories? Sabrina must have seen the doubt flicker across my face. She put a hand on my arm. "They laughed at me when I started, called me shallow, said nobody cares what a mom influencer thinks. Now I have 3 million people who tune in every morning. Believe me, Lena, they want the truth, and they'll know it when they hear it." Danny set up a small table with the rattle, the photo of the Defense Department contract, and 2 invoices with Tessa's initials. "Visuals," he said. "People remember what they see more than what they hear." I touched the rattle, the crescent moon carved into its wood. My father's hands were there. My history was there. "This isn't just about Mark," I said softly. "This is about making sure my child grows up in a world where the truth matters." Sabrina gave me a grin, crooked and real. "Then, let's go live." The countdown appeared on her screen. 3, 2, 1. The chat exploded instantly. Hearts, comments, greetings. Sabrina leaned into the mic. "Hey guys, today's live is different. This is my friend Lena. Some of you might have seen that video of her outside the school. The one where her ex ambushed her and tried to humiliate her." She paused, letting the chat bubble with angry emojis. "What you didn't see is the truth behind it. And Lena's ready to share." She tilted the camera toward me. My throat dried, but then I felt the baby move, strong, steady, reminding me why I was here. "My name is Lena Burke," I began, voice trembling but clear. "And my ex-husband, Mark Halloway, isn't just a manipulator who tried to shame me in public. He's part of a fraud. A dangerous fraud involving government contracts, shell companies, and stolen lives." I lifted the invoices, held them up. The camera caught the initials, TQ. "This is Tessa Quinn. You know her face from curated posts and luxury photo shoots. What you don't know is that she's signing off on payments tied to a project called Phoenix, a weapons program hidden behind fake companies." The chat exploded again. "OMG, what?" I knew something was off about them. I placed the photo of the contract next to the rattle. "This is a Department of Defense document I received anonymously. And this," I held up the rattle, "is my father's. He made it for me. It disappeared when Mark left. He took it. He kept it. Because that's what he does. He takes what isn't his and uses it as leverage." My voice steadied, stronger now. "He tried to steal my reputation. He won't steal my child's future." Danny adjusted the camera so the evidence filled the frame. Sabrina scrolled through the comments, her eyes widening. "They're eating this up," she whispered. "You've got thousands watching." The chat turned from curiosity to outrage, people tagging journalists, flooding hashtags, demanding accountability. And then a new comment pinned itself to the top of the feed. "Verified. Blue checkmark. At the New York Ledger. Lena, we're watching. Please DM us immediately. This needs to go public on a national scale." My chest tightened. This wasn't just a live stream anymore. This was bigger. Sabrina beamed. "Girl, you just blew the roof off." But before I could answer, my phone buzzed again. A new message. "Blocked number. Careful, he's on his way." The baby kicked hard, like punctuation. I looked at Danny. "Then let him come." Because this time, I wasn't hiding. This time, I was ready. The warning came barely 5 minutes before he arrived. Enough time for me to steady my breath, to press a hand against my belly, to remind myself I wasn't standing alone anymore. The live stream was still rolling. Tens of thousands of people were watching now. Comments flew so fast they blurred into a stream of outrage and fire emojis. Danny stood near the door, shoulders squared, ready. Sabrina stayed glued to the screen, feeding me comments, amplifying my words. And then the knock. Heavy, deliberate. Mark's voice. "Open the door, Lena." The chat exploded. "That's him. OMG, he's there. Don't let him in." I swallowed the fear, let it burn into resolve. Let him in, I told Danny. The door opened. Mark strode in like he owned the place, his suit crisp, his jaw set. But his eyes flicked to the camera, to the thousands watching live, and I saw the first crack. You think this circus will save you? He hissed. Turn it off, I said, loud enough for the mic. Not this time. Tessa was behind him, her blazer sharp, her belly a shield she thought made her untouchable. She scanned the room, her eyes landing on the rattle, the invoices, the Defense Department seal. Her face went pale. This is slander, she snapped. You'll be sued for every cent you don't have. Sabrina leaned into the mic, smiling like the influencer she was. Hi, Tessa. Just a reminder, tens of thousands are watching. If you'd like to make a statement, this is your chance. The comments flew. We see you, Tessa. Explain the invoices. Phoenix equals exposed. Mark's composure cracked. You don't understand what you're doing, he barked. These contracts, this money, it's not just us. You're pulling on a thread that will unravel everything. You'll get people killed. I rose from my chair, one hand on my belly, the other holding the rattle high. My father's work, my history, my proof. No, Mark, you did that when you chose greed over humanity. When you stole from me, from him, from every person you thought was too small to matter. For a beat, silence. Then a pounding on the door. FBI, open up. Mark froze. Danny moved fast, yanking the door open. Agents swarmed in, badges flashing, voices commanding. Mark Halloway, Tessa Quinn, you're under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, and violations of federal procurement law. The live stream caught every second. Mark's face twisting, his handcuffs closed around his wrists. Tessa shrieking that she was pregnant, that she didn't know, that she was innocent. The chat went nuclear. Fire emojis, justice emojis, people cheering from behind screens. One agent paused by me. Miss Burke, thank you. We've been circling this case for months. Your evidence cracked it open. I nodded, tears blurring my vision, my chest heaving with relief. The baby kicked again, strong and certain. Mark turned once as they dragged him out, eyes burning with hate. You think you've won? You've just made yourself a target. I met his gaze, unflinching. No, I've made myself free. The door slammed behind them. Sabrina ended the live stream with a flourish, whispering, You just broke the internet. Danny sat heavily across from me, a tired smile breaking through. It's over, Lena. I touched the rattle, feeling the smooth grain, the crescent moon. No, I said softly, it's just beginning. 6 months later, I stood in the same baby boutique where everything had started. Balloons floated again, but this time, I wasn't a woman caught off guard. I was a mother holding my daughter, her tiny fingers wrapped around the rattle that had finally come home. The boutique speakers hummed with lullabies. Strangers passed by smiling, no whispers, no judgment. Just life. Sabrina's followers had turned me into a symbol of resilience. The FBI case against Mark and Tessa made national headlines. Atlas Defense crumbled, Phoenix burned. Mark sat in federal custody awaiting trial. Tessa faced her own charges, her curated world collapsing post by post. And me? I had my job back. My students painted brighter now. They'd seen their teacher fight and win. I kissed my daughter's head, breathing in her baby-soft hair. We did it, I whispered. We fought. And for the first time in years, I felt the word future as something warm, not terrifying.